Hello everybody, here's my legal disclaimer. I am not a financial planner. I have a business degree, not in economics. I have a business degree in computer information systems and telecommunication systems. The only thing is that I really love investing, and very early in my life it was impressed upon me to save money early. So anything you hear from me, you need to run by a qualified and professional financial advisor. I'm here to just plant a seed, save money, go save money, save your money, don't waste your money, save your money, free yourself from mental slavery, save your money. Have a good day everybody. Alright, hello everybody. So I wanted to go on to the next video here. This is going to be basically my story. I'm going to go over it again. The most important day in my financial life was probably when I was 17 years old and I went into an economics class in high school, and my beautiful teacher brought in a financial planner, and she talked to us about the time value of money and the value of investing early, and said that we could all be rich if we just saved. I think her value was $2,000 per year, and she was starting at 18. And I want to say she was saying we could be millionaires. Because I said starting at 25, so you can imagine if you started at 18, it would be even better. So I think she had a number that was something like $2,000 a year between 18 and 36, and we would be a millionaire. And of course, you're a 17-year-old boy, you're like, whoa, I'd like to be rich, that sounds fantastic. And I paid attention. And years went by, I went through a couple of low-end jobs, and finally I got a job at an office, and the office had a 401k, and as soon as I was able, I started putting money in that 401k, and that's where it started. I made a lot of choices in my life that helped me save money early. I stayed living at home as long as seemed reasonable. Stayed at home during college. That saved a lot of money, and my rent was very low that my parents charged me, so that saved money. And I think it was actually my parents wanted to raise my rent, and to a level that kind of I started thinking, you know what, I could almost share a room with somebody for that kind of money, and that kind of pushed me out. And I actually ended up in a better situation where I was actually paying zero rent, but I was sacrificing some of my personal freedom. I found a situation where I moved in with a handicapped woman. It was a friend of a friend, and she was not wheelchair bound quite, but had muscular dystrophy, which is a terrible disease. It basically, most people work out and you get stronger. You tear your muscles and you tear them, and that's it. You get weaker. So she needed a lot of help. She needed help growing grocery shopping. She needed help just in case she would fall randomly because a muscle would give out and she would fall and sometimes hurt herself. So somebody had to be there. So that was my sacrifice. I gave up some of my personal freedom in that after I got home from work, I had to stay home. So I did that for I think 2.5 years, and I saved a ton of money. For the period of time that we're talking about, I started maxing out my 401k. So we're talking about, being a very young man putting away $20,000 a year, almost. I want to say it was more than $20,000 a year because there was a match from my employer, which initially my employer match was very, very good, and as my career went on, the employer match went down to almost nothing. So initially it was a very lucrative match, and then still not a bad match, but not nearly what it had initially been. So I would say one of my keys was that sacrifice I made early in life that allowed me to save not $5,000 or not $2,000 a year, but I was putting away whatever the IRS maximum was, which I want to say was like $17,500 back then. Which was an incredible amount of money, because I was living rent-free. I was a very simple person. I didn't have a lot of expensive tastes, and I still bought it. Wasted plenty of money. Bought plenty of video games, bought plenty of movies. This was before Netflix. Wasted a ton of money. God, if I wish I could go back, probably half the money I spent I wasted. So even with that, I got out of college, I got a decent job, and started making in the neighborhood. I think I started around, it was $20 an hour. I was at $42,000 a year, which if you're in the Midwest, you're like, that's a ton of money. But in California, people are looking at me like, not so good. So California is very expensive to live in, and keep that in mind. These numbers that I'm talking about are California numbers. So what I did was I was able to save a tremendous amount of money, and then I got what I don't know would call a terrible idea, a good idea, that I needed a house, or a condo actually is what it ended up being. And so what I did, good or bad, I don't know in the end if it was a good or bad decision. I certainly probably should have waited another 5 years. I bought a condo. How did I do it? I liquidated half of my 401k. A lot of 401ks allow you to take out down payment assistance, and I paid a 10% penalty on that money. So that was not necessarily a smart thing to do, but that got me out of that living situation, and it got me into my own place by 28 years old. So by 28 years old, I was living in my own condo that I was paying for by myself, just barely. That was very tight. So let me tell you why it wasn't a great idea. That was May 2005, and I think you all know what happens pretty soon after that. So, but you know what? The market turned, and I was this close to dumping out of my condo and just becoming a renter. But luckily I ran the numbers. You know, we had TurboTax, and we ran the numbers, and we figured out that real estate taxes and property taxes and the fact that rent would not be too much cheaper in the end, at the end of the year after taxes were figured out, it was actually still better to stick it out in the condo than to dump out and take a hit on my credit as well. So I ended up sticking it out in the condo. Whether that was a good idea or a bad idea, I don't know. In hindsight, I probably definitely would have waited a few more years to buy my place, and I would have stuck it out in that situation, taking care of the lady a few more years. That probably, you know, if you talk about divergent paths, you know, where I would have been in a lot better situation because I wouldn't have put in a bunch of money into a condo that went and lost all of its value. So anyway, life's rough, right? But here I am, I'm still a happy guy because I've been saving my whole life for my retirement. So, and so I bought the condo, and I had to stop saving for my retirement. I couldn't afford to do it anymore. Fortunately, I was able to get a couple more raises. My work kind of went through, you could call it a standard bell graph, you know, kind of went up, and there was a high point, a high water mark, and then it went downhill from there. So, oh well, my boss decided he wanted to develop an app, and the company became kind of a strip mining operation after that. So I started saving again as soon as able. Every raise, instead of using it to buy some stuff I didn't need, I used it to put more money on my 401k. And so that was putting money in the 401k, you know, pretty good time, right? This was in the middle of the financial downturn. So I halved my money a couple years before the financial downturn, which maybe in hindsight was a great idea, right? It wasn't too long after that, maybe a year and a half, 2 years after the market took a huge hit. And so my money was not in the market at that point, or not as much of it. But I started saving again, and I started putting in money at the right time, let's say, right? Because the market was coming back. And so another thing happened. You know, we got to a point in the company, I told you it was kind of a bell graph, where we were no longer getting raises, and it kind of became a negative situation, and a little unhappy. So I gave myself a raise. I looked at what my company offered, and one of the things it offered matching up to the maximum IRS level. So I buckled down, and I made some sacrifices in life. Again, hindsight, they didn't really feel like sacrifices. We're going to talk in another video about the kinds of things that you can do that make saving $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 a year possible on not a huge salary. So I didn't have any raise, so I made a raise. How did I make a raise for myself? I started saving more, which made my boss have to kick in more on my 401k, which put a smile on my face because I felt like that was a raise. Then another huge moment in my life, probably second to the initial one in high school. There was a guy on the radio, and he's got these silly little ads in California. I'm sure if you're in Northern California, you know who I'm talking about. He says, "Don't invest and forget." And he has these little seminars, and he's got financial planning offices all around the Bay Area. And I'm sure he's a great guy, and he certainly helped me. Thank you very much, Mr. Don't Invest and Forget. You know who you are. So I would hear on the radio every day, "Don't invest and forget, don't invest and forget." And you know what I did? I looked at my 401k, and I started looking at it, and I said, well, what am I in, and why? And is what I'm in smart? And I started coming up with a plan. So what I did was I started thinking about baby boomers, and um, I did a basic trend analysis, really, right? Don't invest and forget. And I started looking at my funds available to me and who was doing what. And I'll be darned if I didn't see that the T. Rowe Price Science and Technology and the T. Rowe Price Health Sciences were not just shooting off like rockets compared to everything else. And that was well early into their run. So I started thinking to myself, of course technology is huge, and we have the baby boomers who are getting up there in age and needing more and more help, and they're going to be spending their retirement on, staying healthy and not dying. That's the most important thing in life, is not dying. So I said, you know what, health sciences, man, that's where it's at. And so I put the majority of my money. Now you're going to say this is, I'm going to say again, I'm not a financial planner. I've had a business degree and some investment, training, not a lot, nearly at all, but I do trend analysis, and that's how I ran. And I lucked out. I found a trend right at the beginning, and I ran with it, and I did what you're never supposed to do. I undiversified, and at one time, for several years actually, I only had my money invested in 2 funds. It's crazy, right? But I was making 30 or 40% per year every year for 3 years, I want to say it was. And I made my retirement off of 2 funds. I made my retirement off of the run in the tech industry, and I made my retirement mostly off of the health sciences run during the Obama. I don't know if you all followed it. I'm sure some of you did, and you're smiling big wide smiles. Health sciences went through the roof with Obamacare. I'm not sure how or why. Maybe the extra people that went on the rolls, but the companies did very well in that transformation of healthcare. And if you had your money in during that time, it was tremendous. So then, coasting, career kind of going downhill, working as a secretary, being pressured to do things that are unsecretarial with no pay. So it was a bad situation, and it was bound to end, and it sure did. So I was fired. But you know what? All the time I was being pressured, I'm looking at my boss, knowing I have my nest egg, looking at him like, hey man, I'm just a secretary, and I'm not going to run your whole computer department unless I'm going to get paid. And I felt no pressure, because I had in my mind, I have my nest egg, and I know I'm going to have to walk through the desert a while for now. I'm going to have to, and this is what I'm here on YouTube, I'm trying to reinvent myself and started a company. And I'm walking through the desert now, waiting until I'm 59 and a half, and I can collect on my IRA. So it's, at a point now, it's going to roll over probably 2 more times before I can collect on it. And in those 2 rollovers, I am going to have enough money to live a comfortable life the rest of my life. And hopefully, using what I've heard of, you can collect about 4% of your principal every year and never drain the principal. What am I saying? I can take, let's say you had $1.2 million. I think it's $1.2 million in the 401k, and you can take out $50,000 a year, which is 4% every year. You have to check my numbers, but basically the idea is I take out 4% of that million or $1.2 million or $1.6 million or whatever it ends up being when I retire. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a good amount of money. And I can collect out 4% out of that and never touch the principal. And now I can leave my kids a beautiful nest egg. I can live an entire retirement my entire life, live a humble life and live a good life, take vacations, not live like a rock star, but I'm not that kind of person. I get enjoyment out of life for other things. And so that's going to be there, and I should theoretically be able to draw on that for the rest of my life. And when I die, that's going to be waiting there for the kids, and they'll have that for themselves too to help out, because Lord knows what kind of jobs are going to be available in another 40 years, right? Artificial intelligence is going to have us all sitting around doing nothing. So anyway, that's where we're at. I want to share my story with you. I'm not going to go into exact numbers of what I have, and what I have is not much, compared to wealthy folks, but I'm a simple person. I've never had a very incredibly fancy job. I think I can tell you that I don't mind sharing, let's say I live in California, Northern California, near San Francisco, an incredibly high cost of living. And I think the highest year, and like I said, my work was kind of like a bell graph. When I put in a ton of overtime, I think I crested maybe 80,000, which I know is a tremendous amount of money if you're living in the Midwest, but if you live in California, you're looking at me like, yeah, you're actually almost at poverty level at that kind of money. So, anyway, with a family at least. So, I never made a lot of money, and my salary went significantly down from there with actual pay cuts as the company kind of went downhill. So, you don't have to make a lot of money. You could be a teacher. You could be a janitor. You could be anything, I think, that's making... Well, really, what it boils down to is not spending as much as you make. Every year you spend less than you make, and you take that excess and you put it into your retirement. And if you could do that from a very early age, you're never going to have to be a slave. I mean, you'd be amazed. You see like how employers treat employees, and you don't have to have a slave mentality if you know that you have your retirement there, and it allows you flexibility. It allows you to maintain your self-respect and not have to do things that will cause you to feel bad about yourself. So in the end, I lost because I got laid off, but I never had to compromise myself. I never did. So, and I have a retirement. So I'm walking through the desert for about 18, 19 years. I got to get myself through that, and then I have a retirement. So please save early. I hope I've impressed upon you. Save your money. The next set of videos, we're going to start talking about frugality and where you can find this retirement money. You look at it, you're like, dude, I'm paycheck to paycheck. What are you talking about? How are you going to save me money? So we're going to start talking about it, and most importantly, finding what's really valuable in your life. So that's a little teaser for the next video. Thank you.